And we're live. Hi, everybody. My name is Pasha. You're here on the Agency Operators podcast. Today, I have a very, very, very special guest, Stephen Pope of My Amazon Guy, my
Hey
agency.
guys,
Thank you for joining. How you doing, Steve?
my pleasure. Happy Thursday to everybody.
Happy Thursday. Yes. So, whole bunch of things to get through. Um, Obviously, there's so much content out there and so much more to discuss, especially with your new focus, My Agency Guy. But before that, share a little bit about your story. I mean, a lot of people do know your story, how you started in a basement, made it to 20 million and plus per year as an agency operator in the Amazon space, but some people don't know the story. So if you can share a little.
Yeah. So I started my career as a TV reporter. I was doing a live weather hit in the middle of Wisconsin at 10 o'clock at night. Big blizzard hit the state, and everybody was home in their pajamas, and I was going live doing reporting. And I missed my cue. I felt like an idiot. I was like, what am I doing with my life? I made a decision to quit that very night and switch my career field. I didn't know where I would end up. It took me 2 years to get even close to e-commerce. I took an in-between job. Got an MBA. I went and became an enrollment counselor. And then I finally got into higher education, working at Western Governors University as an enrollment counselor, and then Straighterline. And then that's when marketing started to become my thing. And I started learning how to sell things online. And I finally landed into one failed startup after another. So I worked in women's plus size clothing. I did kitchen equipment. I did um, all kinds of different things, even a mobile application build for the number one telecom company in the country, and precious metals and gold and silver coins. And so when I was on this corporate track, I was super driven. I was like, I'm going to be a CMO someday. Right. So that's what I was trying to do and do marketing. But along the way, I fell in love with Amazon. And so I was one of the very first people to sell on the Amazon platform. And I learned I was invited to the beta program for Amazon advertising, which was pretty cool. And the second company I worked at, I was still getting PPC clicks for 2 cents a click for ad position number one. Right. So like back in the day, you could print money on Amazon. It was nuts. If
Yeah.
I had the wealth I have today, I would go back in time and buy as much inventory as I possibly could and sell it on Amazon at 2 cents a click all day long. Today, PPC clicks and supplements are like $5, and all
Yeah.
of the other different categories have just skyrocketed in prominence. So Amazon's half the economy. I fell in love with it, and I've been doing that since. One of the failed startups I worked at was a lighting company, and I was making close to $200,000 a year, age 30, and I got laid off. I was like, what the frick? I did my job. I took them from nothing, peanuts, to $1 million run rate a month. Like I was crushing it. I was doing really good. And they just wanted to go a different direction with their strategy, right? Which is, Pasha and I were talking right before we flipped the slide that, sometimes you can do your best work for a client and then your bill becomes so large because you charge a commission that they fire you. It was kind of very much what happened to me
Yeah.
at that last failed startup. I'd earned all the raises. I'd earned all the bonuses because I just crushed one target after another. And so when I got laid off, they gave me a 3-month severance, right? Which is really nice. That's a golden parachute if there ever was one. And so there were about 48 hours that went by, and I'd ask myself, have I peaked? Like, who the heck wants to hire a 30-year-old for $200K? Right? Like, I was living the dream as far as I was concerned in the United States. It's not like I was in San Francisco or New York. Like, it was $200K in Georgia, right?
Mm.
So it went pretty far. And so I looked at the sun, I looked at the forest, and I was like putting around. And then I just was like, this is stupid. I'm going to go work for myself now. Right? Like, I'm tired of making all these dudes millions of dollars. I'm going to do it for my damn self. And that's exactly what I did. I made a video, I made a LinkedIn post, and within 48 hours, I had signed my first $3,000 a month client. And it was a supplements brand. I hadn't done supplements yet. Oh my gosh, that was hard. The amount of template work, and I had to load 80 products, and they were reusing UPCs and stranded and yanked listings, and they were selling test boosters and fat loss, and just like every difficult product you can imagine, I was selling for this company. Despite all that, I got them to $80,000 a month in the first 90 days. And they told everybody. And then all of a sudden my phone's ringing off the hook, and one thing led to another. And within the first 3 months of me making my agency, I had generated $43,000 in monthly reoccurring revenue. And I'll be honest, like, it didn't hit me at that point. Like, I didn't realize I was successful at that juncture. You know, I was like, man, I don't know about this agency thing. Like, some people listening to this would be like, 43 freaking $1,000 a month by day 90, and you weren't sure. And I'm like, yeah, I wasn't sure yet. I was still interviewing for jobs. That's how much I didn't want to start an agency. And I've never said this publicly, by the way. I just really struggled with the concept. I was like, running an agency is so hard. I've hired and fired so many agencies. You just run them ragged. They have to literally shovel manure all day long. And then when you do your good jobs, they'll fire you anyway. Or when something goes wrong at the company outside of your control, they'll blame you as an agency. Like, I had worked at Moxie Interactive as one of my jobs on my e-commerce career in the corporate side first, and I had seen corporate agency work, enterprise level at the highest level, and I'd seen all of the politics and I'd seen all the things that happen, and I was like, I don't want anything to do with that. That sucks. But I fell into it, and I was going to just do some in between consulting, but then when I sat down, it was June after the April launch. I realized, man, I'm onto something. So I started hiring people. And by the end of my first year in, I think it was 2018, uh, end of 8 months. So I started April 2nd. By end of 8 months, I had hired 7 people or 6 people or something, and started figuring out like, hey, this is a viable business. And I just started making really good money. And the results were good. Clients were happy. Not every client, of course. Like some you fail with, and you can't help a bad product, right? But it generally just kept going. And so I've had nothing but the elevator on the way up as an owner, as a business, as a CEO. And today, fast forwarding 6 years, I now generate $20 million. I have 500 employees. There's 400 brands that have me on a reoccurring revenue. And that doesn't account for project orders and coaching and courses that we sell and all the other education fun things we do. So it's been a good ride. And I'm still excited to keep riding it. Even though I've hit the I win button, I find myself just intoxicated with the difficulty, to be honest. Like, it's more fun than a video game. It's hard.
So my question to you, like, because it's been an elevator ride, what about feast or famine? Have you experienced that to
Oh
any?
yeah, many
Yeah.
times. Yeah. So when the first famine that occurred for me was when everything shut down for COVID. I lost 33% of my business in 10 days. And I was like, man, this sucks.
Yeah.
But because I had cash in the bank, I wasn't freaking out yet. I was just like, these guys are all violating their contracts. And they're like, sorry, see you. I know we're supposed to pay you, but we're not going to pay you. And I was like, this sucks. And then about 45 days later, when the first toilet paper shortage occurred, and and the toilet paper client that I still had sold out, right? Like $500,000 in TP, like their entire annual supply gone. Then all of a sudden my phone was ringing off the hook. And so I told you I lost 33% of my business during that COVID, whatever the opposite of bump is, dip, I guess. And then I had the immediate opposite. And I gained on top of what I had lost by almost 2x.
Wow.
So my business, and I will tell you right now, there is nothing harder in business than roller coasters. Like, you want more of a franchise stability model where you're slowly going up the
Yep.
roller coaster. And I'm telling you, that was the hardest part I've ever dealt with as an agency, because client loss, there's churn, there's burn, all of your employees are freaking out. Like, am I going to have a job next week? All that good stuff. I didn't fire anybody. I didn't need to. I was like, I had the long view, and I'm like, oh, we'll figure this out. And what do you do? And then within 45 days, just all of a sudden, boom, it just went bonkers crazy. And then I did a podcast on Quiet Light Brokerage, like 2 months after that, gained 11 clients from one freaking podcast. And I was like, man, this podcasting thing is amazing. I'm going to just go on every single podcast ever. And a lot of those clients were very long tenured clients. It was really good. And so I started creating a lot of content and doing all that stuff. But yeah, so the worst months ever was that 33% loss. I would say second worst, nothing greater than 10 or 15%. But it's a high churn model. So you will experience, especially in the Amazon agency space with SMB, small medium business, right? So if you're an agency that caters to enterprise or your MRR deals are north of 10K, totally different animal. My MRR deals are averaging right around 3,500 bucks, and so it's a lot of cancellations, churn, businesses going under. It's like the restaurant industry. Like for every 3 businesses that launch, 1 will exist in 3 years, right? So we're seeing a lot of that in the Amazon space, and so you just have to be ready for that. You have to have a good acquisition model. No matter how good you are at retention, you're going to have high churn rates, and hardly anybody talks about this.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's no way to control that, right? And I think that's the same with smaller businesses and larger businesses. You get too successful, they think they can get a better deal, or whatever the case
Yes.
is, or something changes. I mean, at the end of the day, you're also relying on Amazon. They own the data, they own the sales. If they don't have a strong sales pipeline going through Shopify or whatever else, and something happens with their account, that could be a reason, right? So there's a lot of risk, but then there's also a lot of reward. You were talking about getting on the podcast and getting some clients that way, but was that how you started kind of growing the client base? Or, I read somewhere that you were doing a little bit of the kind of warm outreach, right, through referrals and things like that. So with a little bit of both, or kind of what was the next step there?
Yeah, if you want to pull up my screen, I'll walk you a little bit through the timeline with
Sure.
some visuals here. So this is a case study. You guys can all access this at myguy.agency/case, and that will load this page here, and you can see all of our stats. And we're very public with this. But so in 2018, I did $360,000 in revenue, 1 million in the second year there, and you can see all of the client growth and all the employee counts and all that good stuff. So. Feel free to guide me on what you find to be the most interesting. You talked about the acquisition model, so I'll scroll down to that. I took this from Alex Ramosi. I put my own spin on it, but when I looked at his model and I realized that I basically followed it, I found that very interesting. So 4 ways to acquire customers: warm outreach, content, cold outreach, paid ads. And on the left, those are the people you know. On the right, those are strangers. So when I made a LinkedIn post, that's technically content. However, it was warm outreach in the sense that one of my people in my network referred me to somebody else. And so that client, my first client, is still a client today, 6 years later. And that was from that warm outreach. So I like to say warm outreach got me to my first $1 million. Now I had obviously started content during that warm, from day one. And so how I got to 10 million, 100% is related to content generation. So YouTube has been my number one generation for income. LinkedIn would be my second. And then that was what got me about $10 million. And then cold outreach, this is very difficult to crack. And so as you go through the quad, it gets harder and harder, right? So easiest is warm outreach. Next easiest is content. Very scalable. My vehicle, so to speak, and I've got a picture of a Lambo there. The vehicle just gets bigger, but your leverage also gets bigger. And so it gets harder. You have to learn how to steer the Lambo, so to speak, but like it gets easier to scale when you get into a bigger vehicle, so to speak. So cold outreach, if you yourself were going to go cold call, your leverage is a person of 1. So I built an outbound sales team. The first account executive that I hired ended up being my Midas Touch golden girl, and she's still with me today. And so it's interesting to see that like you there's a little bit of luck involved, right? So like she took a chance on me, I took a chance on her. I came up with a model that was low base and high commission. Well, if you're really good at sales and you close a lot of contracts, you make a freaking ton in that model, right? And so ended up building an entire BDR process with a sales team just under about 30 people in 2024 now. And so this program is only a couple years old. So 2021 January, yeah. So it's barely 3 years old. Starting out that process, actually 2022, excuse me. So that's when we first started the outbound process. and just over 2 years ago. And so that really jettisoned us to get into the $20 million dollar category with cold outreach. And so that's cold calling, that's cold email, that's cold LinkedIn, all that good stuff. Now, running paid ads, this is something I've only been doing for about 6 months, and it's what I believe will get me to $50 million. And it's very difficult. A lot of other agencies would be more likely to acquire another agency to propel growth, right? So if you look at like a company like Power Digital and some other big agencies, they just buy up other agencies to get their growth. I have not done that. I did acquire, Maximizing E-commerce, but it wasn't an agency. It was more of a talent acquisition deal, and we drove half his revenue anyway through events, PPC summits, and we actually have one coming up, and so that was the only acquisition I've done. So I believe Google ads, Facebook ads, LinkedIn ads are going to help me get to the next level. And we've signed about 12 clients so far, directly provable off of a first click Google ad. And it's taken a long time to crack that. So if I was an agency just starting out and I'm less than $1 million at this point, I would stick in the left side. I would stick into warm outreach and content. And then once you stabilize, once you can't grow anymore, start the cold outreach, because it's harder to do that. It takes more time investment. You got to hire more people. But paid ads is be the last thing I do. There are some agencies that are in our space that you and I cannot name that exist that are probably crushing it, $4 or $5 million companies, and they only do the cold stranger stuff. And the reason we never hear about them is because they're not making content. They're not showing up anywhere. And so it is possible to skip parts of the quad. It's just not as easy. It's rarer. And so if you're trying to figure out where to start, my recommendation, what worked for me, top left, bottom left, top right, bottom right. Go from warm to cold in that order.
Got it. My question, how do you find inspiration for content? Seems like at this point,
Yeah.
right, 2024, there's so much how to sell on Amazon out there. What do you do to get inspired to come up with new things, to keep it interesting, keeping it fresh?
Yeah, two primary drivers of my content. Number one, anytime a customer asked me a question, no matter how small or niche it was, I made a video. I made content about it. And honestly, that has been amazing for me. So most of the questions I would get were generally around catalog problems. And so my library of catalog troubleshooting is like 400 or 500 videos strong. Error codes. How do I load a parentage file? How do I get a yank fix? What's a suppression? All that good stuff. And so it's not that I found that work sexy, but I believe in the concept of simply asking customers, what do you want? Give it to them, and then ask, did you get what you wanted? And sometimes they ask for cookies and you give them cake and you're like, frick, I should have given them cookies. But then when they tell you and they re-describe their problem, you're like, oh, you really want a chocolate chip cookie, not an oatmeal cake. And let me fix that for you or whatever. So that would be the first one, is to just simply answer customer questions. The second is, because I'm an Amazon seller and I did sell my Age of Sage brand to my partner, still have all the access and all that good stuff and permission to shoot videos. But I understood my customers' problems because I lived them. So, for example, I would have every problem that another seller would have. These I'll take off the screen share so I can kind of blow this up. So this is a Tumblr business that I ran that I lost $250,000 on, because on Black Friday last year, they yanked all of my Tumblrs and they got rid of parody in the Tumblr category. Like, you can't find parody anymore, right? I would combine other problems, other IPs together, and I would take two concepts. I'd take like Starbucks and Pikachu, and I would slam them together, right? And it was crushing me. It was doing very well, crushing for me on sales. And then one day, Amazon's like, "Oh, parody's dead." Yank. I lost my brand registry. I have a hot sauce bottle on my desk here. Let me see if I can grab it from the side here. And while I'm here, let's show off the t-shirt. So us versus Amazon is one of my brand positions. And I believe it's not me against you, Pasha, or any other agency out there, right? Like, it's all of us against Amazon. And I think that's a very important concept, or brand position. Like, hardly any other agency takes a position like that, which then becomes my defensible ground. So I make content that's not just for my customers who are sellers, but I also make content that's for other agencies. A lot of reasons I do that. One, hiring pipeline. Most of the Filipinos that work for me watch 20 videos and they're at another VA job struggling because they didn't get training. Nobody told them what to do. And they go Google, like, how do I freaking do this? And they see my video after video after video. And then I basically train them at their last job. So, like, why am I working for this guy? I'm going to come work for you. And so we gain a lot of talent acquisition. All right. So I digress. Let me show this hot sauce bottle next. So when I was an Amazon seller, trying to ship this hot sauce bottle in. This is a 5-pound glass bottle. I spent $1,500 making this beautiful label. Label looked great. The product was good. I got lots of great feedback. And at the time I had no warehouse. So I was doing it I was bootstrapping out of my house. So I shipped 1,000 of these in to Amazon. I paid them to do the prep work, right? So I was shipping these in like 24 case, 24 bottles per case. So this 5-pound glass bottle, Amazon puts bubble wrap on and throws the sticker on. So far, so good. But then when we launched, they shipped it out in padded envelopes, right? And as an Amazon expert, I was blown away. I was like, how did I not see this coming? How did I trust Amazon to take care of my business, right? And so as a seller, I understand the idiocracy that you go through trying to sell on the Amazon platform, right? Yep. The pictures that I got from my customers with glass shards everywhere and hot sauce everywhere. It was a saucy disaster. And I was very depressed about that situation. I was like, frick. And so that lesson, though, I paid my tax, as Norm, the beard guy, would say. And I learned that you have to pre-box individual units for sale if you have a fragile item. Because if you don't, Amazon will just ship your shit in a padded envelope and say good luck. And so I backed away from that and tried to figure that out. So anytime, and I've saved dozens of other companies from repeating that mistake. So when I make a mistake that costs me a couple $1,000s, I can then tell everybody else and save somebody else $1,000, and then dozens of people times each other. And then all of a sudden we've made a net revenue increase of 100K. And that is value. So when you ask me how I come up with content, very convoluted answer I just gave you, but give customers what they want and share my story, share my experience, and anything that affected me will affect you, will affect every other seller, will affect every other agency. And I just speak those truths over and over again, even when it's embarrassing as hell. So,
yeah, but honesty is power. Honesty is truth. And
it is.
do you ever boost any of the stuff that you make? Okay, so it's organic content. You make a lot of it.
I have, but no.
Yeah.
Right? Like I've probably like over 6 years, I've maybe spent $10,000 boosting any content. And the YouTube videos that I post today, I don't even put ads on them, right? So I don't boost the content. I don't generate revenue off the content. My methodology on this is, if I was a business thinking about hiring Stephen Pope, I wouldn't want them to see ads for another Amazon agency on my video. I wouldn't want them to see ads when I might be able to sell them or whatnot. So I think boosting's okay. I have nothing wrong with it per se. I just think that I like the idea of a natural content audience, right? So like every audience member in my following is authentic. And so I can understand how valuable it is because of that. The second you start boosting or buying likes, followers, whatever, it convolutes the algorithm and you start losing interest, in my opinion.
What about newsletters? How valuable is that?
So I'm crushing it right now with LinkedIn newsletters. I cannot tell you how under tapped this is right now. I'll give you an example. Sometimes I get bored on the weekend because, like, when you run a 500 person organization, it's mass chaos every single day, and I can't get through my emails by 5 o'clock, like, ever. But on the weekend, it's dead. Like nothing happens on the weekends, and I'm like pulling out my hair, what hair I've left. And so I end up finding myself making my best content on the weekends. And so I've been writing LinkedIn newsletters, and I posted one last Sunday at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and it had 5,000 views in the first 50 minutes.
Wow.
Right. So, like, if you're wondering where you should be spending your time from a content gen strategy right now, there is no question LinkedIn newsletters are where it's at right now. Right. So, like, if we think about all the things LinkedIn has nerfed recently, carousels are kind of nerfed. Polls don't really do anything, even though they get lots of impressions. And then let's see. So carousels nuked. I'm trying to think what else. But in any case, newsletters I've had the highest production value from, bar none. There is no question.
Cool. Another question, it's a little bit of a pivot. I remember you speaking at some point about starting a SaaS product, right? With some kind of technology that you were building, investing in, and then you ended up losing a bunch of money, right? And saying, "All right, yes, 2 million. Wow." So you said, "Screw this. I'm not doing the tech thing anymore. I'm sticking to this agency world." But naturally, AI is getting popular. SaaS just looks like such a great business model because it's so scalable and high profit if you build it right. And there's so many SaaS tools already with e-commerce and Amazon in particular. Not sure how much room there is. That's a different topic. But speak a little bit about that experience. Why did you kill the project?
All right. So I'm going to ask you a question too, if I can, to answer yours.
Sure.
So
Yeah,
Pasha, do you sell on Amazon?
I do.
Okay. How many tech tools do you pay for on average?
A whole stack of them. I
All
don't
right.
even know how many. A lot.
All right. So if we take away like the project management softwares and all the like tech tools, but just focus on like Amazon specific ones. So like the Helium 10s, Jungle Scouts, Seller Rises of the world. How many of those do you pay for?
In reality, it's not. Yeah, I guess when you really break it down like that, it's not as many. I guess I'm a little bit of a cheater because I use my agents. I hired my own agency, so I just pile it all in. But yeah, Helium 10, PackView, uh, Seller Board. Uh, that's probably
So
about,
three,
yeah, maybe
three.
three. Yeah,
Okay. Yeah. All right. So I believe the average Amazon seller uses 2 to 3.
yeah,
And so now if we calculate how much you pay for those tools, it's probably going to be, if we lump sum average it out, $250 a month, right?
right.
And so is there really budget and room for all of these SaaS tools that are being generated? I don't think so. I think sellers are so overwhelmed with things they can do that they just need somebody to come in and tell them what to do. And so, like, how many products can you launch? How many A plus contents can you do? How many A/B tests can you run? Infinite, right? And so the reason why I think the next good tech tool that will come about, it'll be a tool that tells you what to do at every given moment for maximum ROI. Now, I want to be clear. I use tools. Tools are good. But what I'm trying to suggest is that the next guy who thinks they're going to build a SaaS tool, be wary, because I spent $2 million trying to make a SaaS tool. I thought that I could take Asana, Helium 10, all the good keyword tools, Time Doctor, CRM software like HubSpot, and then jam pack it all together. And what ended up happening is that when we started doing the user testing, when it was almost done, is that nobody wanted to use this piece of junk. Nobody thought it was better than any of the native applications. And so when you're trying to build a SaaS tool, especially if you try to do something stupid like I did and combine a bunch of stuff together, it has to be better than all of them, or nobody will use it. So I was making the tech for my own agency, and my own agency people didn't want to use it. And at that point, I was like, damn, if nobody of my own people want to use it, there's no way I can sell this. What am I doing? Let's just cancel the project.
What did $2 million go towards? I mean, that's a lot of money.
Dev
Like
work,
just so many
lots of dev work.
devs. Yeah, tons. Even though you were using existing products as like a base, like you were basically making this
Yes.
modular design, APIs, and connecting them together.
So if you go through any of the public records you can find on these publicly traded companies, right? So like Asana, spent 50 million bucks. Like Helium 10 spent 10 million bucks. Like those aren't quotable numbers. I'm just making it up. But like if you look at them and search them down, it'll probably be about right. Right? Like HubSpot, probably north of 100 million dev work. Right? So there's just so much money that goes into these softwares to make them as good as they are. So the only SaaS software that makes sense to me that could enter into the Amazon space would have to be a niche solution that nobody's done before. right? And so it would have to be, it can't just be another clawback tool. It can't be just another keyword tracker tool, because nobody's as good as Helium 10's Cerebro. Like, let's be honest. Like, I
Hmm.
really wish somebody was, because I hate how Helium 10 is run from a management standpoint. I'm very vocal about this.
Hmm.
Um, they don't listen to me as an agency, even though I'm like, all you got to do is fix and tweak these 3 things and make me super happy. They don't care, right? Like, I'm not their customer, ICP. And so I've been really begging like Zonguru or AMZ Scout or anybody to try and knock Helium 10 off a peg. And Carbon 6, to their credit, they went around trying buying all these softwares to try and do exactly that.
Yeah.
But they haven't yet. It's a journey. Like, it's a lot harder than people think. So here's what's great about launching an agency. You can be profitable day one. Here's what sucks about running a SaaS company. You will not be profitable for at least a year, at least. And that means you need investment. That means you need capital. That means you might have to talk to VCs, right? So I have a close friend who is running a tech product, which I'm not going to name because I don't want to embarrass. And they are struggling, very struggling. They have a cool idea. It's a niche product, which is generally good, right? But they're about to go out of business because they don't have the run rate to keep the dev work going, and they don't have enough sales on the front end. So it's like, what do you do in that situation? Do you go for another cap raise, which then takes your upside out as an owner, or do you cut staff and go slower, right? Which is harder, right? Especially if you're in bootstrap already. So I don't know. But I'll tell you this. I have never, not a single time in 6 years, ever had to ask somebody for money. And that's a very comfortable position for me to be in. The agency I built is a cash cow. It makes north of 43% net profit, net profit. That's even after paying my salary. And so, by the way, I don't think most agencies do that. I think average agency is doing like 15% net. But because of the way I built my system, it's solvent infinitely. Like, I could take a year off and come back, and I would be making almost the same amount of money. It probably wouldn't grow, but I could net the same I did last year, for example. So just be cautious with trying to go down the dev and the coding route, especially since VC money has dried up in the last year or two with hyperinflation, and they see the aggregators failing, and they're like, man, I don't know if I want to touch Amazon right now.
Yeah. How do you get yourself out? Like, okay, you can make money day one as an agency owner, but everything relies on you. You can make content, still relies on you. You can grow the business, but you can hire staff, but so much of it is dependent on you. And then when you exit an agency, probably they're going to ask, how long are you sticking around for? And how much of this business is going to die once you go? So, what is the
Great
secret
question.
sauce to really making yourself, you want to stick around or you don't, and it's still going to run the same way? I mean, there's probably a point that you have to, you have to pass the baton at some point, but there, what's that line? Like, how do you get there, and how early can you get there in an agency career?
So I'm going to answer this in a peculiar way. Some
Okay.
people are going to follow this, some are not. So Jesus Christ, when he left the planet, right, died and got resurrected, came back after he got resurrected, found Peter and his boys on the lake fishing again. And he strolls up to Peter and says, dude, what are you doing? Like, the work is just beginning. Just because I left and now you're back fishing. If I needed fishermen, I would have asked you to go fish, but I need fisher of men. I need you to go feed my sheep. Right. And so he asked Peter, do you love me 3 freaking times? And I can only imagine what it would have been like to be Peter at that time. And so I am following in Christ's footsteps, both spiritually speaking, but also as a business in this one way. I want my business, my brand to change the world. I want to be useful to the world. And the only way to do that is to make a self-perpetuating business or religion, if we're following this metaphor, to outlive me.
Hmm.
So that's why I take very peculiar stances, like us versus Amazon. I'm an education company that happens to be an agency, that I have core values that are unique and absurd, and it attracts a following of people that I believe that even if I got hit by a bus tomorrow, would continue my vision. And so my agency will be more valuable because of that. Now, will everybody understand that vision? Absolutely not. Right? Like, I guarantee you, if VCs were looking at my firm, they'd be like, like it's a founder brand. They would see that and be like, I'm out. They'd look at the SMB world and be like, I don't want to touch that. I want to buy an enterprise agency. But like, I don't care, right? Like, I really don't care, because I believe that what I'm doing will be useful to the world. Even I'm going to make a profit, right? I want to be prosperous in all ways. I believe it's possible to be prosperous, both be rich, but also physically, spiritually, family. I got 5 kids. Hashtag never pull out, right? Like, there's a way to get all of these things together. You don't have to pick and choose. I think you can have it all. You can have your cake and eat it too. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to be easy. That doesn't mean like one cup's going to be empty at a given time, right? Like, if I told you which cup I think is the most empty right now, I'd go physical. Like, my body is exhausted like from trying to pull off all this stuff. But I'm going to jujitsu. I got a massage this morning, right? Like, I'm trying to take care of my body. But of all the cups, that's the one I'm probably weakest on.
Does having 500 employees feel heavy?
It's very heavy, right? Like,
Yeah.
think about this. Like, the average person can't manage more than 8 people, right? So take 500, divide that by 8. That's how many managers you need just for the regular entry-level talent. Then you need a manager of managers. So take that number and divide that by another 8, and then take that number and divide it by another 8. And there's your pyramid right there, right? That's your family tree. That's your org chart. And so I had to figure out how to make a system that would create other leaders, right? So one of my manager core values is replace yourself, right? Like, leadership is basically by multiply yourself. 1 + 1 = 3, right? And biologically, that's actually a true equation, right? And I wanted my leaders to create other leaders in the org. And that takes pressure off me. Now, what personally taxes me the most is meetings, right? And so I try and avoid taking as many meetings as I possibly can. And so, like, client-facing meetings are completely off of my plate. I do 1 or 2 sales calls a week just to keep my skills sharp. But most of the meetings that I'm doing is in service to my current staff, right? So I believe in Moneyball concept, just get on base. I believe I can take people who are imperfect and build a system around them, but I have to round out their edges. I have to polish their diamonds, right? I'll put a guy on first base who can't throw the ball. No problem. Do it all the time. Now, these people who are widely successful with me, hopefully will be successful after they graduate MAG, but not all will be. My system only works for them in some cases. So double-edged sword on that. But long story short, I think if you build a self-perpetuating system and you drill home your vision and you do your core values and you come up with BHAGs, big, hairy, audacious goals, right? Like, I hired 100 interns in 30 days when I only had 100 employees, right? Like, that was insane at the time.
Wow.
Yes, big things like that. I told my biz dev team this week on a Monday, I was like, hey, you have 48 hours to figure out how to send 1 million cold emails by end of year. And then they were like, what? How are we going to do that? I'm like, guys, this is a big, hairy, audacious goal. You come back and give me a pitch. Tell me how to make it happen. To their credit, by Wednesday afternoon, they had a plan, right? And so I'm like, this is awesome. Let's do it.
Yeah.
And it's only going to cost me $700 a month, right? So 1 million emails. Can you imagine that? 1 million cold emails, $700 a month.
Wow. That's a great solution. It's like you think something's impossible until someone is pushing you to go beyond your boundary, right? But that limit is set psychologically. You think it's there, but then someone's there to kind of push you a little bit further. So back to okay, how many meetings do you have with core team? So 500 divided. There's probably like a handful of people that you actually speak with like all the time, slacking, texting, chatting on calls and everything. And then they do the same with a larger group. And then they do the same with a larger group. And so there's probably people in your company you've never even spoken to. Is that true?
That is true. However, I try and randomly Slack 10 people every single day that are not in my normal group, right? In theory, I could get through the whole org in a couple months. I constantly ask for feedback. I ask 3 questions. What should we stop doing? What should we start doing? What should we do more of? I got that from Harry Joyner. And that I'm telling you right now, like that, I've never changed those 3 questions. I ask them all the time. They're very, very helpful. You can ask your clients that. You can ask your customers. You can ask your people. Um, but you're right. I can only talk to so many people in a day. So my
Yeah.
executive team is where I focus. I'll try and dabble a little bit with the directors. I just hired a COO for the first time, and this will be my first chief hire ever. If you've read Traction or Rocket Fuel, there's a concept of integrator and visionary. I'm one of the select few chosen ones, if you will, right, in hashtag quote, that can be both the visionary and the integrator. And so I never gave up my integrator seat. Like I couldn't. I was like, I freaking love building so much. Like I had the energy to do it, and I would just go through my people. So like, there are 50 or so entry level talent salary people that I go in and give direct orders to. Right, like there are 20 people that like technically report to me in that kind of situation. Right, and I have somebody else to like check on them and whatnot, but I read the biography for Elon Musk, and I found that of all people in the world who run a system, he ended up running a system. My system was closest to his than I could find anywhere else. And so Elon like doesn't have an executive assistant. I don't have an executive assistant. I check all my own email. Um, I do all of my own comments on LinkedIn. I do all of my own content. Right. I make time for it. It's not easy, but I do. But like running an hour weekly executive meeting, I dislike doing that. It's very taxing. So I brought in a COO, Ken Zhu. He was the interim CEO of Seller Interactive, which I thought was like the closest lookalike agency to my model. They had embraced the Filipino outsourcing culture, and they had a very similar mentality, business structure, acquisition model. So when he became available as talent, a couple of phone calls later, we were in business together. He actually started this week at MAG, and I'm for the first time going to try to give up the integrator seat. We'll see how it goes, but I actually think Ken might be able to do it, and I'm excited by that.
Will you ever sell my Amazon guy or my agency guy or any of that?
I probably will, but I don't need to, right? So like I'm building it to hold, right? I would love to know how much I'm worth. Truth be told, I would love for somebody to be like, oh, Steven, you're worth $100 million or whatever it might be. But like, I think that if you build an agency that you want to hold, that makes it more valuable to sell, right? So I don't wake up every day wishing I could get out of my system. I wake up every day thinking, how can I blow my system up even more and scale it? And so that passion, I have so much more to give. So it's but at the same time, if somebody came to me and said, Steven, here's $100 million, and then I could go and get a bigger vehicle and change the world faster, I probably would, right? Because there are some things that I have deep to my heart that I want to go do. I want to go help kids in ways that a lot of people are ignoring, right? I really love Culture Index, right? So like and there's also things like Dude Wipes, like the CEO of Dude Wipes. He gets to make shit posts all day long, and I'm like, that sounds like a cool job. Maybe I'll do that, right? I'm a big chess player, right? Like I actually played a chess match with the CEO of chess.com last week. And that was lots of fun. And I was thinking to myself, what else could I do with my life? So yes, every CEO, every business owner ever always thinks the grass is greener on the other side. They always think, what else could I do with my life? Or how could I accelerate all of these things? Yes, those are normal thoughts, completely normal. But at the moment, I've never been more passionate and never working harder on my current project than I've ever done before. And generally, that's a good place to be.
And I'm sure it's changed you as a person, that journey, right? Building the company
Oh, yeah.
has changed you in relation to the people that you know, in relation to yourself, your beliefs, your mental, physical, everything, right? I mean, it's been the vehicle that's driving you.
Culture is top down. And so I have the number one responsibility to push a healthy culture onto my organization. Now, there will always be some people that won't fit in and will say things. And, if you go on Glassdoor, you find a few bad comments here and there. But by and large, I've been able to effectively, positively change people's lives, right? Like I go to bed at night thinking I created 500 jobs, right? And so it has changed me. Like I'll be honest, like I always thought, like a couple years ago, I thought I was gonna like take a 2-year break and go serve a mission for my church, and go proselyte and tell everybody about Jesus. Like I that was like what I was thinking I was going to do. And then I couldn't do that. I wasn't able to access that, and so I was like, and I won't tell you why because it's a little personal, but like I couldn't get access to that, and I was like, frick, what am I like? Then what am I going to do instead? And then it dawned on me, serve my people, right? Like as basic and as easy as it is to say that now. At the time, it was like enlightening, right? Like you hear people like Gary Vee talk all the time about like just love your people, serve your people. I drank a little bit of that Kool-Aid in the last couple of years. And the conversations at my company changed, right? Like I talked to like some people I've had a really dramatic impact on their health, right? I helped one guy cure his diabetes, right? I told him I was going to fire him unless he shaped up, which prompted him to go to the doctor. And then he found out he had diabetes. And I said, why don't you lose some weight, sir? And he lost 100 pounds.
Wow.
And obviously he did all the hard work. Let's be clear. But I was there for him during that process. I had intimate conversations with many people in my organization at all levels. Any topic you imagine, I've probably had it with my people. Some of them like it, some don't. But I influence it nonetheless. And I get to instigate change. So when I was in college, I was a debater on scholarship at Weber State University. And I love debating. You could give me AF neg right now on any topic. I'd probably have fun debating you. But I will tell you right now, I don't think I ever persuaded anybody to change their behavior. If I went back to school right now, I would go back to learn how to persuade. So the last 6 years of my life is basically the hardest school of knocks I've ever had to do to learn how to instigate behavior changes, to persuade people to do things that are in their own best interest, to convince them to do things I want them to do, right? And at the end of the day, I could be like, oh, if you don't do this, I'll fire you. I could do that. But I prefer to show them, like, here's the light. You want this light? Cool. I'm a caveman with fire. You want my fire? No problem. Here, let me show you how to light it. And then to watch them take their fire and then like go and do their own thing and be their own caveman society and build their own bedrock up. That's amazing. It's epically amazing.
That's being in service, back to that thing, right? Pushing people beyond that limit that they set for themselves and being the one to say, I want you to move a little bit further and giving them that support. Sometimes being in service is a hard thing to do because it forces you to have those hard conversations. Sometimes people don't really want to hear, but you're the one to say it. So it's like, oh, you're the
Yes.
bad guy for a minute, right? Being a father of 5, something about being the bad guy, right?
With love, though. With love. Like I got into
Right.
this Amazon game because I didn't want to talk to people. I wanted to be a super introvert in my cave. Then I made an agency and realized I had to serve people and talk to people all day long and learn how to do all that. It's the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. No question about it. So,
Yeah.
but it's worth it. I love system building. It's just all problems at an agency are always people based every single time, all day long, people problems. And, like in the last 6 weeks, we've had 6 people that have lost a parent. I've had to send flowers every single week.
Oh man.
And it's really sad. And I'll sidestep some personal thoughts I have on, I think there's too much death right now, and I have beliefs on that. But instead, I'll just say this: like, I think it's very affected the culture and the people I'm working with to see the deaths and the losses, and to be able to have some intimate conversations about the meaning of life and that families are forever, and to be there for people in their hardest time. Like, if I lost my father right now, it would devastate me. Right. And so, nobody told me I would be doing this 6 years ago. Right. Nobody, school didn't teach me this. My mentors didn't teach me this. Nobody understands what it's like to be an entrepreneur until you're in this like that.
Yeah, you're thinking that you're coming into something just doing some infographics and doing some PPC, right? Next thing you know, you're having these real life conversations with people on the other side of the planet, right? Essentially.
And it's more valuable, more effective, more results. You have
Yep.
to get through the people problems to actually solve PPC and SEO and design and catalog every day.
Great. Thank you for all that insight, Stephen. I appreciate it.
My
On a
pleasure.
final note, I know you have some SOPs, right, available if anybody wants them.
Yeah, so 2 SOP programs we have. If you're an Amazon brand, you can purchase them at myamazonguy.com/SOP. 550 SOPs, how to run everything. Agencies will also find this valuable because if you don't have SOPs at your agency and you want to know how to crack that catalog error code, we have an SOP on it. And then second, we have agency SOP specific. And this is part of our My Agency Guy brand, which is at myguy.agency. And those are SOPs on operations, hiring, recruiting. And then we also have a more expensive program for acquisition. So if you're an agency that wants to scale or just an agency that wants to figure out how to run things better, we have those available. So I hope you guys check those out.
Thanks, Stephen. Thanks, everybody, for watching. Have a great rest of your day.
Cheers.
To the next one.